Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the CCSN podcast. I'm Chris Caselli here, along with my friend and co-partner, Chase Carlos. How you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely splendid. How are you?
I am doing great. Well, we got a lot to discuss, obviously. First, going to kick it off with the MLB. And one thing that we talked about the last couple episodes is the Rangers Suarez dominance tour, and it's here to stay, and it is here. A couple weeks ago, it was questionable if the Phillies had a legit number 3 starter to help them throughout the playoff push and throughout the playoffs. And those answers are 100, or those questions are 100% answered right now. Over Ranger Suarez's last 6 games, 28.1 innings pitched, 25 strikeouts, 6 walks, 1.28 ERA, and a 0.85 whip. And these are some great starts. Obviously, he had a great start at Citi Field last week. He had pitched 7 innings, allowed 1 run against Max Scherzer, and that was just, or no, 0 runs against Max Scherzer, excuse me. That was just a great win for him in a playoff atmosphere, and he really showed that he's here to be that guy. And I think he's going to be someone in that rotation that isn't going to get talked about until the playoffs actually begin. It reminds me of a little bit of the Anibal Sanchez situation a couple years ago in Washington, where he came out and he was dominant as their game 3 starter, and it really helped propel them to be World Series champions that year. So I don't know if you have anything with Ranger or any thoughts with him, but let me hear it.
Well, I can't say enough great things about Ranger Suarez. He's been pitching out of his mind recently since he's got healthy. Ranger Suarez is really one of the premier left-handed pitchers in the league right now, and people aren't talking about him because he's really on, in my opinion, one of the most stacked rotations in baseball. They have 6 real starters that have not just like positive like careers. They have some seasons where they have been elite pitchers, and that's 1 through 6. They've got Aaron Nola, who's been this season one of the best pitchers in the MLB. He's striking out batters at such a high rate. Zach Wheeler, who's having a bit of a down season, but Zach Wheeler is incredible. He's been incredible his entire career, and ever since he signed with the Phillies, he's been a Cy Young candidate every single game he's played. And now, like you said, you got Ranger Suarez as a 3. You just added Noah Syndergaard, who he's got the flashes. I think he's a little bit washed. The velocity's ticking down rapidly, but there's still stuff there. And then you've got at the 5-6, Longman or a fill-in starter, you got Eflin Gibson. Those 2 pitchers, I hold in pretty high regard. I think Eflin's got some of the best stuff in the MLB. It hasn't really figured it out yet, but I think pure stuff standard, Zach Eflin is top tier. And then you've got Kyle Gibson, who he's had some very decent seasons in the MLB. He was an all-star just last season. So I really do like the Phillies rotation. It's going to be very scary come the playoff times for teams going into a 7-game series with them.
I absolutely agree with you. And one thing that I just remembered actually about Zach Eflin is he struggled primarily against NL East teams, which his ERA against non-NL East teams were sub 3. And then against NL East teams, he quite frankly sucked. But that was just one thing he has to figure out. And as you said, I mean, I don't, there's probably 2 rotations in the NL that I would take over the Phillies right now, and that would be the Dodgers and the Mets. And that's no slash on the Phillies. I mean, obviously with the Mets, you probably have the best dynamic duo we've seen in multiple years with DeGrom and Scherzer. And then with the Dodgers, they just have people there. I mean, they have Tony Gosling, Clayton Kershaw. They just lost Walker Buehler, and I think that's going to be pretty big come playoff time. I don't think people are talking about that enough, because as good as people like Tyler Anderson and Heaney has been this year, I just don't know if I can trust them throughout the whole playoffs, and that's going to be something to definitely watch.
You lose Buehler, you add May. Like I love Buehler, but if there's a team that can afford to lose a pitcher like that, it's the Dodgers.
I agree with you.
They have 7 pitchers that are top 2 level on most teams.
I just think with May, it's going to be hard to. Well, Buehler was hurt too, but with May, it's going to be hard to immediately jump into that because he hasn't pitched a game yet, if I'm correct. I think he comes back in the next 2 weeks, they're projecting, but he looks great in AAA. So I don't think he's going to, take any step off of what he is. He's throwing over 100 miles per hour. His stuff is as dirty as ever. So I do like that point, but losing Walker Buehler is huge, no matter how you look at it, I feel like.
Yeah, 100%.
But another thing that I'd like to point out is the New York Mets. They are losing Carlos Carrasco this year, and he's been or not this year. They're losing him until the playoffs. They're projecting 3 to 4 weeks, and especially with somebody who has dealt with injuries in the past, I do think that's something to definitely look for or to monitor. He's been very solid this year. He's 13-5 with 3.92 ERA. He has 126 innings pitched, and he has a 1.30 whip. So that's definitely someone you want in your playoff rotation, especially someone with that experience. He's pitching the World Series for the Cleveland Indians. So that's definitely something the Mets are going to be a little worried about. But come playoff time, if he's available, it's going to be huge for them, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is probably going to be a bit of a bigger deal than people realize. Carlos Carrasco, he's not this premier name, but this Mets team, it feels like they kind of peaked a little bit early to me. Their bullpen in the middle innings. The Mets fans are not they don't rely much on that bullpen because it's not good. They've got Edwin Diaz closing games, but outside of that, it's not really this great bullpen. And it showed its head last night against the Braves. They won that game, but middle innings, they were scared. It was a 4-run lead. You felt like they were going to blow it the whole time. So I feel like this is going to be a huge loss for the Mets. And come playoff time, this is when things are starting to go downhill, it feels like, for the Mets.
I do agree with you. I mean, it's crazy though that Carlos Carrasco with those numbers right now are technically their fourth best starting pitcher. So I mean, they definitely have some wiggle room, but I think one more injury that starting rotation, and I don't see it. And I could definitely see another injury happening. I mean, every single person in that starting rotation does have injury history. And the Mets, the way that they put these guys out there, you would think that they don't. I mean, they're not. I mean, DeGrom is on a pitch count right now, but again, as you mentioned last episode, he looks like he's throwing harder, and he even said he wasn't, but I don't agree with that. So I don't know. I feel like the Mets are one of those teams where one more injury to that starting rotation, they're definitely gonna have to start worrying about it. I mean, when they're injured, they are bad. They don't really have that much depth.
I'm looking at this bullpen right now. This bullpen outside of Edwin Diaz and maybe Ottavino, it's disgustingly bad. I mean, there is Seth Lugo might be your third best pitcher in this bullpen. Might be maybe Michael Gibbons with his 4.09 ERA. Like, I am not very, very high on this bullpen. I know Mets fans aren't either. So that's
Miguel back or Migo MCHGILL. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Taylor McGill.
Yeah.
I don't see him in here. I think he might be back, but it looks like they have him listed as a starter here.
Yeah, he started as a starting pitcher in the beginning of the year, but they said they were going to move him to the pen. So I thought that would be a help for them.
He's not back. No, he's still hurt.
Yeah, so they just have a lot of injuries. I mean,
even then though, he's pitched 41 innings to a 5.52 ERA. Like he hasn't been that great this year either. They're relying on this team to stay completely healthy, not just with their position or just with their pitching, but with their position players too. I don't think they're this very deep team offensively either, especially not the catching position, which that's huge. But I think that the Mets, they peaked early, like I said, and it's starting to fall apart here.
One contract that's looked terrible for them so far is that Escobar contract. I mean, Mets fans hate him. I think he has like a 0.2 WAR right now, and he has, I mean, one more year in his deal, 10 million. That's not that bad, but coming off the years he's had in the past 3 years, that's pretty bad. So, and he looks like literally awful on defense. So they brought him in for his bat. His bat sucks. They're like, we're going to put you at third base. We'll revolve you with JD Davis. JD Davis is gone now. They just brought up BD yesterday, and he hit his home run. But some Mets fans really think he's like going to be the next David Wright right away, and that's just funny to me, to be honest with you. But Mets fans are a little high on themselves right now.
Yeah, look, I love Beatty, and I like the Mets' talent right now. But I'll say it again. Early. They went on the run way too early, and the guys are starting to tail off towards the end of the season. But that brings me to another thing that I wanted to talk about today. Francisco Alvarez, he has been the number 1 ranked prospect in baseball for the top 3 cycles, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. I think Gunnar Henderson is a much better prospect, And I think that to put a guy as the number one prospect is such a high honor to give a guy. And I don't see Alvarez as that talent, personally.
I think they give it especially when it comes to catchers who can hit, they always like overvalue them a little bit because the catching position over the years has been one of those, if you're not a good hitter, it's okay position. But recently, over the past couple of years, you need everybody in that lineup to hit. But I do agree with you. I really do like Gunnar Henderson. I think he's going to be a stud the second he comes up. Um, and for Mets fans calling for Alvarez to come up this season, I think that would be a complete disaster. If I'm being honest, you do not want a rookie catcher calling playoff games right now, and that's just my honest opinion. I really think they should have made a bigger push for a guy like Wilson Contreras at the deadline. And Mets fans will tell you their catching is terrible. They don't have one guy that they like back there, and especially they like that James McCann signing a couple years ago, and that's another signing that just turned out to be bad for them. So they have some holes that aren't really being talked about because they have so many. They're very top heavy, the Mets. That's just the way to look at it. They're extremely top heavy, and if you lose one more of those guys, you know, it's a team sport, so you can't rely on Francisco Lindor or Pete Alonso every at bat.
100%. On the Alvarez note, like he's not performing very well in AAA right now, so you're not even bringing him up to be an elite bat right away. I mean, looking at his numbers, he's batting 172 through almost 30 games here, 100 plate appearances, and a sub 700 OPS. He's getting on base at a decent rate, which it projects for good success in the MLB. But to be a superstar right away, I don't see it with him. I don't think he's at the level of like an Adley Rutschman, who was the number one prospect before him. And I think there's a pretty like large gap between those two players.
Adley Rutschman is fantastic already too.
Amazing.
So that's a
Absolutely
top 3 catcher in baseball right there.
He's on the way to a Hall of Fame career, in my opinion. He started late, 24 years old, but honestly, he's going to, in my opinion, be a top 3 catcher from the moment he steps into the league to the moment he retires. So I love Adley.
Adley Rutschman, one thing with catchers that I think that people don't really realize is I think they should get a little more of a pass when it comes to the Hall of Fame, because when I say Buster Posey, you think he's a Hall of Famer the second I say that.
Absolutely.
His WAR is 44.8. That's his career WAR. And people have to take it, because I was actually on Twitter yesterday looking at that, and people were saying because of Buster Posey's WAR, he's not a Hall of Famer. And you just said Adley Rutschman, Hall of Fame. And I think that if you're going to measure Hall of Fame career, that's one I would just look at automatically. Buster Posey. I mean, he's a 3-time champion, MVP, 7-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year, 5-time Silver Slugger, Gold Glove batting title, comeback player of the year. You name it, he has it. And just because of that WAR, people say he's not Hall of Famer, and I think that's just quite ridiculous. And I was looking at Buster Posey breakdown a couple days ago compared to Adley Rutschman, and they just remind me of each other extremely. Like, he just gives me so much Buster Posey vibes. And as soon as Buster Posey came up, that franchise started turning around, and look what Adley Rutschman's doing. I think the catching position is extremely undervalued, as we were talking about. I'm not trying to go back to the Mets, but with the Mets, I think that's going to be one of their downfalls. And with the Orioles, they already have that position obviously locked up for the near future. And I'm all in on Adley Rutschman.
Yeah. And it makes Adley Rutschman being good is so fun for baseball because it makes the Orioles a fun team. It's always great to have those teams that just aren't really the top contenders come up and surprise people and just be fun. And that is exactly what the Orioles are. They've got 2 more top 5 prospects in Gunnar Henderson and Grayson Rodriguez. I love what the Orioles are building. I think long-term they're going to be a very exciting team. And I mean, I don't know if they compete for a championship, but they are going to be a contender, I think.
I think with the right moves, they 1,000% can contend for a championship. I mean, I think this offseason, they have to be one of those teams going out there to spend, because there are going to be some pretty good free agents on the market. I mean, I'm pretty sure Carlos Rodon's going to opt out, and I could see him going there. I mean, that'd be huge for that rotation. I think if you could add one more ace-like player, that would do wonders for a team like that. I mean, their bullpen's already pretty solid, but, adding relief pitchers never hurts. And, I don't think a guy like Trey Turner is going to end up there, but that would be cool. That would be cool.
they look like they're going to start expanding their salary. Their owner said, and if there's anybody who's going to get a huge contract this offseason that is a superstar, maybe not exactly worth the contract he's going to get, but he's performed that well up to this point, it's Trey Turner, as you were saying. And we talked about him having a 4-team market last episode. I think there might just be a 5th team added in now.
And I'm all in for that. That would be awesome for the city of Baltimore. Needs some love. That Orioles fan base has been through hell the past couple of years, so that would be great for them. But staying in the AL East, one team that I think they are just the most disappointing team in baseball this year, 100% are the Toronto Blue Jays. Coming into this year, they had the second best odds to win the World Series, right behind the Dodgers, plus 750. And right now they are 62-54. And the most interesting stat to me about them is they are 29-38 against teams with a winning record. And who are you going to face in the playoffs? Teams with a winning record. They just lost 2 out of 3 to the Orioles. Bo Bichette has been, frankly, not good. He's been disappointing this year. I wouldn't call him awful. He has a 1.5 WAR, he has 17 home runs, 260. He's batting 261, has a 301 OBP, and he's slugging 429, has an OPS of 731. So he was supposed to be in the MVP talks this year, and he's not even close to that.
They moved down Bo Bichette to the 7th spot in the order, which is the lowest he's ever batted as a professional.
Yeah, so that's just saying something right there. And the biggest knock on the Blue Jays this year is 1,000% Jose Barrios. He has a negative 0.9 WAR. He has an ERA of 5.61. He has only 108 strikeouts. He has a whip of 1.385. And for a guy getting paid the contract that he's getting, that is the last thing you want. He has allowed more runs this year than Tony Gonsolin has allowed hits. And they are 18th in team pitching. So I think a team like this, with as many struggles they've been going through, they're going to be in a first-round exit no matter what. And coming into this season, I'll be honest, I was very high on the Blue Jays. I thought that they put the team together. I mean, you have a team of Vladimir Guerrero, Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio, Matt Chapman, Alondro Kirk, George Springer, Tapia, who I really like, actually, and he's been producing this year for the Blue Jays. And I cannot think of their other outfielder right now, but
Lourdes Gurriel.
Yeah, Gurriel.
I love Gurriel.
That team looked like an all-star team on paper, and they lost Robbie Ray. They replaced him with Kevin Gausman. In the beginning of the season, that looked like an absolute fleece. He's still producing very well, Gausman. He had a bad start recently, but he was in Cy Young mentions earlier in the beginning of the year, and I think that was a good trade-off. Robbie Ray's not been his contract worth at all. We talked about that, but the Blue Jays are just an early out for me if they even make it in. And the Blue Jays have one more win than the Baltimore Orioles. And if I said that on August 18th back in March that would be it, you would slap me in the face. So that's just the way I look at it. And I think that Baltimore, I don't know why I keep saying that. Blue Jays fans, you have to be ready for the worst possible outcome this postseason. I think you're a first round exit no matter what.
And it's a 2-year window for them right now. Like their contracts are going to start catching up to them. They were trying to contend right now. They don't have the luxury of being a disappointing team. Vlad Guerrero, when he gets that contract, it's going to be a top 5 contract in MLB history. And he is awesome. He's great, but you're paying a first baseman probably close to $50 million a year. Yeah. So if they're not winning this year, which they're not, I can tell you that right now, and they're not winning next year, when do the Blue Jays win? I don't think they do. And I think that this, like you said, all-star team on paper literally looks like a created team in the show. It doesn't always work out. And this is one of those times where it's not.
And my last point on the Blue Jays, Matt Chapman should not be your best hitter right now. So Blue Jays fans, Blue Jays organization, take a deep look into that. So staying in the AL East, we talked about this before, but the Yankees have to bite the bullet on Aaron Hicks. It is time to cut this man. He has been downright atrocious. He has a 0.6 WAR and a negative 2.91 winning probability added. That is the worst from any position player in baseball right now. And he's their starting center fielder like every single day. Over his last 30 games, he has 92 at-bats. He has 15 hits, 1 home run, 7 RBIs. 24 strikeouts. He's batting 163, 294 on base percentage, and a slugging percentage of 196. And he is on the books for the next 3 years. And the Yankees, you are still putting him in center field on the best team in baseball, according to all of your fan base. So that is atrocious. That is Brian Cashman. What is it going to take? Did you see him go after that fly ball a couple of days ago? It literally looked like a first grader doing it.
Yeah.
And first graders are not getting paid $11 million to do that. So it is time to bite the bullet. If what's his name? Hal Steinbrenner was still here, or George Steinbrenner, he would have kicked his ass and sent him to the curb a long time ago.
Yeah, I really feel like we got to be Aaron Hicks' biggest haters. That we have not gone a single episode without trashing Aaron Hicks yet. But for good reason. I mean, the Yankees are a team that we're going to talk about. They're one of the most exciting, most controversial teams in baseball. I don't know if exciting is the right word for that. Not anymore, at least. But, I mean, like I said, for good reason, trashing Aaron Hicks. He has been absolutely terrible. There's no reason for him to still be in that lineup. I mean, we're seeing some improvements with that front office. They just brought up Peraza, which we've been begging for that. And I think the reason they waited so long, I didn't realize this, was to get an extra year of team control over him, which I understand a bit, but
I see. And I cut you just real quick. I don't mean to cut you off, but for a team like the Yankees, look what Steve Cohen's doing. And I hate the Mets, but I think Steve Cohen is the best owner in baseball right now. He does not give a shit about team control. Pay him. You know, if you can help us win right now, we're going to bring you up. And that's how they look at it. And one guy that I think the Yankees are just letting rot right now is Oswald Peraza.
Well, they brought him up.
They brought up Cabrera.
Oh,
Cabrera.
Did I read that wrong?
Yeah. So I thought it was that at first too. Oswald has been he's still rotting down there in AAA right now.
All right, I gotta recant what I just said. Then I gotta take it all back. There is no improvement in that front office. That is embarrassing to call up Cabrera before Peraza.
They're 15th. They called up their 14th and 15th best prospects over a guy like Peraza right now. So
that's just disgraceful.
And I actually saw on Twitter people were saying, I looked at this tweet 20 times to make my eyes try to change it to say Peraza, because every single Yankees fan know that that's what's going to happen. And Chase, I don't mean to change the subject right now, but we got a breaking news from the NFL. Deshaun Watson has agreed to 11-game suspension, $5 million fine for violations, and that is complete bullshit.
Are we fucking serious?
He got his way.
11
games, $5 million. That's it. Slap on the wrist. Slap on the wrist.
That's painful.
It's painful.
That's painful to hear.
And that's it. That's the end of the saga. Jacoby Brissett's just gonna start the first 11 games, and then that's it. I think this really shows who Roger Goodell is. This shows what the NFL is. And the fact that Calvin Ridley got suspended the whole year for using DraftKings, and Deshaun Watson gets to be a serial rapist, that just really proves what the NFL's goal is.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that ruling. I got to say that pretty clear.
And he has to undergo evaluation and mental treatment.
Yeah, he needs to be in an insane asylum. That's where he needs to be. But that's upsetting, truly. But it's not surprising.
It's
really. I kind of expected this from the NFL. Once I saw that they weren't even going to let the judge rule, the fact that they weren't going to let the second appointed judge rule, they were just going to try and work it out between them and Watson. That's when I knew that things weren't really going to go very well for that. And it's a damn shame. And it really just goes back to the Cleveland Browns and that organization making the biggest mistake in NFL history. I don't understand the mindset to give that player in particular, $250 million guaranteed. No other player has ever got $250 million guaranteed, but Deshaun Watson, coming off the most egregious act any player could have ever possibly done, got that money. $50 million a year to play quarterback in the NFL after doing what he did is absolutely disgusting. The fact that they made the contract so that he could work around it and not lose much money the first season because he knew he was going to get suspended. It's not only predatory on Deshaun Watson's part, but it's enabling by the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans and the NFL. So it's a joke. I'm still going to watch the NFL. Obviously, I'm still going to follow it, but I lost a level of respect that honestly there wasn't much there. But that little shriveled respect that I had for the NFL, it's just gone.
Absolutely agree with you. And the sad thing is you're gonna go on like Cleveland Browns Twitter or their Instagram page.
They're gonna hype the shit out of it.
They're not gonna hype the shit out of it, but they're gonna say that he didn't deserve it. That's what they're gonna say. Like, I think that's one thing this is the saddest part, that people are literally using the excuse that he's a good quarterback, that he just shouldn't get any repercussions. And that just really shows you what some NFL fans are. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like, even if Deshaun Watson played the whole season, I think they're a good team, obviously, but like, I don't know. I'm not trying to talk about like that right now, but I just hate them. I hope that Deshaun Watson's career sucks the rest of it, and I hope this whole Browns experiment explodes. I hope Myles Garrett ends up on a contender and wins 5 Defensive Players of the Years, and Denzel Ward goes and becomes best cornerback somewhere else. So, Cleveland Browns, you're gonna get what you have coming for you.
I wonder what the dynamic is on that team, because it's a 90-man roster right now with the training camps. There are not 90 pieces of shit on that roster. There's one massive piece of shit, Deshaun Watson, and a bunch of other people who are just being paid to be around him. I wonder how they feel about him being their quarterback. It can't be great. It really can't be great. I mean, I know personally, you put me in that position, I'll show up, I'll get my check, I'll do my job, but I will be miserable.
I'm excited to see in like 10 years the interviews with these players, because that's going to be huge when like that documentary comes out, and like we have Myles Garrett saying how he wanted to like punch him in the face or something, like just like something like that. I'm excited to hear that, because you're not going to hear any of that right now, because they're getting paid. Probably management and the Cleveland Brown owners said, hey, shut the fuck up. Do not talk about this to the public. You are here to play football, and we will cut your ass if you bring it up. So
you'll start hearing it soon. After preseason cuts, you'll start hearing what some of these guys who don't have a spot on NFL rosters have to say about Deshaun Watson. And then you'll hear the people like, oh, well, he got cut, he's just salty. Nah, he's the guy that's actually in the situation around the guy. So
exactly.
And from the people that have been around Deshaun Watson, they say he's not this great team player. He's not this very likable guy. He's a reserved guy who keeps to himself, and he's not very like outspoken. So that doesn't sit well in most locker rooms anyway. So that doesn't bode well for building a team to win, and it doesn't bode well for being respected by people. So it's a joke in Cleveland right now.
And I think it's just going to be disaster for years to come, to be honest, because as you said, like, we're going to start hearing what people have to say, but you can't build a team around a guy like that. It's that simple. Always starts with your quarterback. And that quarterback is a piece of shit. And half the team probably does not like him and can't stand him. So, I mean, actually, this is the last thing I'm going to say about this. Why I'm drawing a blank right now. All-time Cleveland Browns lineman, Joe Thomas. His wife tweeted the beginning of the year actually something about how like they were disappointed from that, and the amount of Twitter hate that she got from Cleveland Browns fans, I was just like, wow. Like,
imagine hating on Joe Thomas's wife.
Exactly.
Joe Thomas is the Cleveland Browns, dude.
Joe Thomas is like
you said all-time Brown, and you didn't even have to say lineman. I said Joe Thomas. That's
exactly.
That's how much he is the Browns, and the fact that his wife would get hate for that is embarrassing. Cleveland fans have to be embarrassed.
So that's just it right now. I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off. I kind of forgot what we were talking about, but I saw that
we were at the Yankees or something like that.
Yeah, so that was just a little sidetrack for everybody, but back on track now. We're still sticking with the MLB for a little longer. Yankees yesterday actually had that walk-off grand slam, which was pretty cool. I mean, they needed that. Donaldson, who's been struggling, and a lot of Yankees fans have been calling for him to get cut, even though he has $20+ million over his next 2 years dealt. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. But the Yankees actually have been pretty dog shit. Like, we all know this. I think they're kind of dead even after that win yesterday. And their last 41 innings before their 6th inning yesterday, Uh, IKF is the only Yankee to have produced a run in the last 41 innings. I don't know if I said that, but that's terrible. And he was probably their worst offensive player in the first half or bottom five. So that's just saying something right there. Gleyber Torres has been outright atrocious. He's been that guy in the beginning of the first half, people were calling for him to be an all-star. And in his last 30 games, he's hitting 208. He has 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, and 125 at-bats. He has an OBP of 244 and a slugging percentage of 344. So they got to have these guys step up. I mean, if Aaron Judge goes in a little slump, the whole team can't go in a little slump. And I don't know if you saw, but Stephen A was talking about the Yankees yesterday. And I mean, Stephen A is not a baseball fan. I mean, he probably like looked at a couple highlights and like he probably knows like 6 players on that team, which I mean, he's a Yankees fan, but he's not all in depth for them. But he was talking about how Aaron Judge is 0 for 12 or 0 for 14 in his last 14 at bats. And I was like, you obviously don't really understand baseball then. I mean, you're going to blame literally a guy who's having an insane, like video game number season for his last 14 at bats. And I feel like any real Yankees fan would say, Aaron Judge is going through a little slump right now, which he hasn't done literally all season. And every other batter in the Yankees lineup is going through the same slump as well. So you can't blame that stuff on Aaron Judge. He was definitely has his right to a little slump, I'd say. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But when you have guys like Josh Donaldson, Gleyber Torres, Aaron Hicks, those guys got to step up in the long run. It can't just all be Judge.
Yeah, the Gleyber Torres thing, it's upsetting to me. Gleyber Torres is one of my favorite players in baseball, and he's been good. But like the first 2 seasons of Gleyber Torres, I really thought he was going to be something special, man.
I thought he was the second baseman of the future, if I'm being honest.
I thought he was the best second baseman in baseball, like for the future. But it's just he's average right now.
He's been terrible.
He's been bad recently. He started the season out very well, but I guess he's just a streaky player. I don't really know what it is with Gleyber. It's all the talent in the world is there with him. It's just
I think it's just in his head, a lot of it. If you watch it, I mean, he'll be at bat and he just looks like he's just trying to hit a home run, and he looks like he's trying to hit. And whenever you're watching a player going through a slump, like a guy that comes to my mind right away was Chris Davis. I remember when it was literally a joke how bad he was, but you would watch him bat, and he literally looked like he was nervous up there. And from MLB player, you can't have that. And another guy I'm thinking of right off the bat, Nick Castellanos in the first half of the season, it literally looked like he was just swinging, like he was praying and swinging. So you can't have that, especially from a guy like Gleyber Torres in the Yankees lineup. So let's see what happens with that. But that's all the Yankees right now.
You know, it's bad. I was watching Gleyber Torres the other day. He was like at least, I don't know how far in front he was of this slider, but it was like an MLB The Show swing, man. Did you see bad.
That the Javi one a couple of days ago when he literally like hit it off the ground? It was
crazy. That was funny.
That's one guy. Like I remember watching. That's another guy. I thought those were like the future, Gleyber and Javi.
Javi's defense at his prime, I have never seen ridiculous. A player that good. Like his arm is absolutely incredible.
And now he leads the league in errors among all shortstops.
He's always been a bit of an error, but it's just the arm talent is just it's so fun to watch. I love Javi Baez. He's one of my favorite players in the sport. It's just he's not great anymore. It kind of sucks.
And he was, I mean, I remember looking at his stats. He was someone I was like, wow, like this guy's gonna win 2 MVPs, but not anymore. He's just gonna
for Hall of Fame.
He's just the guy with the big contract now
for the Tigers.
Sorry.
Not good.
But my last thing I want to touch on for the MLB today is we had a Cy Young face-off 3 days ago. We had Verlander versus Dylan Cease. Verlander was great. He 7 innings pitched. I wouldn't say great. He was very good. 7 innings pitched, 8 hits, 3 runs, 4 strikeouts, and his ERA is down to 1.95. Dylan Cease, on the other hand, he had like a bad outing for him. 5 innings pitched, 6 hits, 3 runs, 4 strikeouts, and his ERA is now above 2. So I guess he sucks now. I'm just kidding. But his ERA is 2.09 now, and there's only 2 qualified pitchers in the MLB left with a subpar 2 ERA with Sandy Alcantara and Justin Verlander. And I think if they keep this pace up, they are just clear front runners for the rest of the year.
Those are your two Cy Youngs there. We talked about Dylan Cease being one of the most fun Cy Young
It was fun.
candidates, but it's just he's not Justin Verlander. And I think we said it at the time. At the end of the day, if we were to put money on somebody, it would be Verlander. And that's probably what it's going to come down to. And he deserves it. This has been probably the best we've seen Verlander since his MVP season. So
and it's been better. And that's crazy.
Probably.
He's 37 now or 30. No, he's 39, I think. Am I wrong there? I got to look that up. I remember seeing a couple yesterday and I was like, Jesus, like this dude is still
he's got
39
Benjamin
years
Button.
old.
Bros, Benjamin Button, aging backwards. It's beautiful.
This man will be 40 in February and he's going to win Cy Young. Like, and it's this, I'm not trying to like drag it on with Verlander, but it's crazy because he's still using his fastball at such a high rate. And like, whenever you like look at older pitchers who are still dominating, most of them just use like their slider, their curveball, their changeup. Nope. Like Verlander is still chucking that. And I'm all for it. I love Verlander.
The velocity is going up too, which is something that I don't know how to explain it. Like
it's
how
crazy.
is Verlander throwing 99 right now?
I was on White Sox Twitter actually during that game because like I always love when there's like a rivalry game because like Twitter is just awesome. But White Sox fans were saying this dude definitely is taking steroids. Like it was like just so funny because like every excuse you could throw at him, but
well, I don't understand what is the natural way to increase your velocity at 39 years old. How are you going to go from a 93 mile an hour on average fastball to touching 99 at 39 years old? I don't get it at all. And I don't think it's steroids, obviously not. But whatever he's
one of the
doing,
best pitchers, one of the greatest pitchers ever. And that's just what it is, you know? And
simple.
It's simple. Like that's what it is. And it's because I'm going to be honest. I remember when, it was like Justin Verlander's free agent. I was like, okay, like, he didn't play all last year. I didn't think he was going to be this great. I thought he was going to be like a pretty good 3 in a rotation or a pretty good 2.
Like a guy on the end of his career, not a guy starting a second phase of his career being like amazing again. Like it's awesome. It's remarkable. I love watching these older players do this. It's almost more fun than watching a young guy come up. To watch a guy like have a resurgence.
It's 1,000% more impressive. It's great to watch. But I think that's all for the MLB right now. Moving on to the NFL. One thing that's been going around the past couple of days is Aaron Rodgers calling out his rookie wide receivers. And I found that actually pretty funny because the hate for Aaron Rodgers is so real. Like
everybody hates everything Aaron Rodgers does. He cannot eat breakfast without getting killed. It's insane.
Yeah. So I think it was a little just dragged. I mean, I was reading something and apparently they had a team meeting the next day at like 8 a.m. And it was with Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love and the other backup quarterback who was there. And I don't really know why they were there because I think this should have been Aaron Rodgers and wide receivers one on whatever. But the offensive coaches were there and Aaron Rodgers was basically like, listen, like, don't be a bitch. Like I meant what I said. Like we got to be better. Like wide receivers in Green Bay are held to a certain standard. Can't be dropping these passes. And like, I think that's great. Like, what do you want? Aaron Rodgers is still trying to win a Super Bowl right now. It's not like he's he's won 5 and like he's just like on this little fairy tale run. Like no, I feel like he's out here to win. He's out here to win it. And I feel like that's what you want from your quarterback. I mean, if he was coming out and saying everything was sunshine and rainbows, I feel like that would just show that, he got his money and he doesn't really care. So I don't know. That's just my outlook on it. I think people are just way too much in depth on it. And just to like connect my points a little bit, Randall Cobb was like, he didn't mean it in any way. He was like, we are held to a standard and it's that simple.
I agree 1,000%. I think that's what you want your quarterback to do is to keep your guys in check. That's kind of like he was doing his job and he's just going to get criticized for it. Like I said, because he's Aaron Rodgers. But if we were to see Tom Brady do this, there would not be a word about it in the media. Tom Brady is on a 2-week break from the Bucs right now to spend some time with his family in the middle of preseason and training camp. What other quarterback is to do that? Imagine if Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen did that. Maybe not Josh Allen because he's kind of like the media baby right now. But
I love
like
Josh Allen, though.
Everybody loves Josh Allen. But like if any of these other quarterbacks were to do this, there would be an uproar. And I think that Aaron Rodgers is, talent-wise, every bit as good as Tom Brady. Like
talent-wise,
right now,
like better, I think.
especially right now, especially Aaron Rodgers, and he's got the same amount of pedigree as Tom Brady, in my opinion, but he just doesn't get the same respect from fans because of the way that fans view sports. It's so much about championships and individual achievements instead of actual talent. And I think that skews a lot of things.
Remember that like 2 week fun rumor that was going around when Brady retired that Aaron Rodgers maybe was going to the Bucks?
Yeah, I did. I was all in on that.
Me too. I thought that was.
I thought it made sense. I thought it made so much sense.
That would have been cool, but we're back to reality now. But I thought that was just something to point out. Another thing, another elite quarterback that's set to start week 1 now, Joe Flacco, after that Zach Wilson injury. And apparently, according to Jets fans, he's elite Joe Flacco again. He's been having a pretty good training camp, but the way you're reading about him and like all the things that the wide receivers are saying about him, you would think that he's going to have an MVP season. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. Obviously, I don't think anything's really going to happen, but it would be pretty cool to see him beat the Ravens week 1.
No, it's not happening. I can guarantee that.
I don't think so either, but it would be pretty cool for the NFL script writers.
This is probably the best example of why training camp means absolutely nothing. Joe, like especially training camp stats. I love what at the end of the day when I see a Twitter post and it's like, yeah, Joe Flacco was 17 for 19 today with 4 touchdowns at 200 yards. Okay, these are simulated like practices. These are like, things where
that's what's supposed to happen.
Exactly, like they are designing this for that to happen. We're not like, sure, yeah, he can throw a pass. We know he can connect with an open receiver if it's there. He's an NFL quarterback. This is Joe Flacco. He's won a Super Bowl. He's a fine quarterback, but this is not a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. And people, I think this is more. Everybody understands the Flacco thing. I think it's more of a joke than anything. I don't think people really expect him to come out and start and be a high-level starter. But for people like Jalen Hurts, when we start judging their practice stats, like guys that we aren't actually sure about, that's not going to do anything because a lot of time there is no better place to work on stuff than practice. So if they're working on stuff, that's not always going to be the stuff they're pulling out in the games. There's just so many different variables with practice. And if you're not there to see exactly how they're playing from a skill standpoint, you can't really have an opinion on it, in my opinion.
I agree with you. It all starts week 1 with my evaluations, to be honest. I mean, yeah, as you said, you get all the training camp notifications, and every quarterback's a god, according to that reporter. So I take it with a grain of salt, as you said. It's not really that important. Another thing that we talked about is preseason performances, and if Hall of Fame careers were based off Hall of Fame or preseason performances, Kenny Pickett would already be there, according to the media. And one thing that I just want to talk about is he threw 13 for 15 for 95 yards. His average completion was 6.3 yards. I could do that, if I'm being honest. I mean, every pass that he threw, I mean, it wasn't that great. He made one. I'm going to be honest. I saw one pass that I called impressive, if I'm going to be honest with you. There wasn't really that much. It was with a 5.5 yard average depth of target and a 3.3 yard average depth of completion. So I could do that. Like, that's just what I'm saying. And Steelers Twitter calling for him to start already. I actually saw Colin Cowherd yesterday. He was like, the time is now for Kenny Pickett. If there's any time, it's right now. This guy's the story. This guy's the story. That's what we talked about last time. It's all about the story behind this guy, how he's gonna be the king of Pittsburgh. He's not. Mitchell Trubisky is that starting quarterback. I think that is just set in stone. And Mason Rudolph had a better preseason preseason opener, and no one really talked about that. So I mean, I think it's just all about the story with this guy. And come real NFL, you can't do that. I mean, he was doing against the Seahawks 3rd and 4th guys, who most of them are going to be cut by their next preseason game.
Yeah, I think that's something that gets overlooked. He came in with the 3rd stringers. He wasn't out there the first drive of the game where it's all first string.
He was in the 3rd quarter.
Exactly.
Oh, cool.
I'm not as high on Kenny Pickett as most people seem to be. For whatever reason, I think that a lot of people after the draft started to separate Kenny Pickett from the rest of the quarterbacks in this class, when in the pre-draft process, it was all very close. Kenny Pickett, in most people's eyes, wasn't even the number one quarterback in the class. The Steelers really, I think, just got duped into drafting him in the first round. There is no way that they thought that no quarterback was going to go in the top 3 rounds or the top 2 rounds. They obviously could have waited until the second round for Kenny Pickett. There was not somebody that was going to reach on him. And if there was, we would have saw them either trade up and get him or reach before the Steelers pick. I think it was 21. So I don't see it with Kenny Pickett. His scouting, for me, he was a bad quarterback in the pocket. He was too jittery. He always bailed on clean pockets. He's 24 years old, and he didn't have any success before that. Like before his last season in Pittsburgh, he was like terrible. They've got a bad O-line in Pittsburgh, so I don't think that's going to play to his benefit at all because, like I said, he's a jittery guy in the pocket. He's got a questionable arm strength. He's not very great with the deep ball. He floats the ball. He doesn't put it on a line. He's not zipping the ball in there 30, 40 yards down the field like you want a first-round quarterback to do. And any ball over 25 yards with Kenny Pickett is very questionably placed. He's not going to put it in the breadbasket. He's just going to get it there. And that's a huge problem. You don't want that from your quarterback. The pros to Kenny Pickett is he's good at off-schedule plays, which is not something that translates very well unless you're already a guy with elite traits. And he's mature, obviously, because he's 24 years old. You can get Mason Rudolph is probably pretty damn mature now. Like, he's a leader. Okay, how is that quantified? How do you quantify him being a leader? And he's decent at the intermediate stuff between like maybe 10, 20 yards over the middle and some towards the sideline as well. So, like, I don't see it with Kenny Pickett, man. I really don't. And the fact that he got drafted in the first round is kind of funny to me.
I absolutely agree with you with that first round take. One thing that I think like it's just a distraction for the Steelers, to be quite honest. I mean, I feel like when they signed Mitchell Trubisky, we were like, all right, like this guy's going to get his second chance to be the starter, well-deservingly. And you bring in Pickett, and now Steelers fans are calling for this guy. I've seen people say my 2 favorite Kenny Pickett takes after that preseason game, I actually wrote them down, was that he's going to have the same type of rookie season as Big Ben Roethlisberger did. And if you guys don't know, he led them to the AFC Championship that year. And the second best one was that Kenny Pickett's college career and NFL career, like the transition, reminded people of Joe Burrow's. That was my second favorite one because Joe Burrow had like a late resurgence or whatever. And I was just like, oh my, I had to like shut the app off after that. So
I've heard that a lot. I want to like attack that real quick. Joe Burrow, the reason Joe Burrow did not like play and he had a similar career to Kenny Pickett is because of the talent he was behind. He was at Ohio State trying to fight for a starting quarterback job behind like every quarterback at Ohio State. They had Baker and Kyler at that time. Or no, that's Oklahoma. I'm sorry. He was at Ohio State. Dwayne Haskins, yes.
The other
was not a huge college guy, but they had their quarterback is the point here. They had a guy there, and Kenny Pickett was at Pittsburgh all 4 years. He was the starter before. He wasn't sitting on a bench and trying to learn and trying to fight for a job. No, he was starting and he was bad. He was not a good quarterback when most of these other at the age that most of these other prospects are going into the draft. He was not good. So you've already got your 2 years of development with Pickett. And I don't know that he's much better than, like you said, Mitch Trubisky. I think that they could have been much better served going after a guy in the secondary like Trent McDuffie, who went just 1 pick after Kenny Pickett, or Kyer Elam, who I hold in.
I think he's going to be really good.
Kyer Elam is incredible. I love Elam, and I hold McDuffie in that same regard, but they play very different roles. And I'm looking at this right now. There's so many players that they could have used here. Like Linderbaum went after Pickett, and I know obviously quarterback's so much more valuable than a center, but you have one of the worst offensive lines in the league, and I don't know that this is a very valuable quarterback at the end of the day.
And especially, I feel like this is like the big point, I guess I would say, with Pickett. I feel like signing, I'm not trying to keep going back on Trubisky, but Trubisky gave you that like room to wait for next year. Like if you're going to draft your quarterback after you just had Big Ben run it for all these years, why the hell would you just not wait for next year? You have like 3 guys, trade your draft capital. That's what I would have done. I would have traded that first if you weren't sure about it, if I'm being honest with you. Get the capital for next year, because I think if you're going to build around your franchise quarterback, it would have been between the three guys next year. So that's just my point on it. If I was an NFL GM, I wouldn't have even like been looking at the quarterbacks this year, if I'm being honest. Maybe I mean, like the Malik Willis third round. I like that.
Yeah,
Like,
third round is when you
take your chance.
Fine. Like, and that's when every other team felt fine doing it. Except it's just crazy to me that the Steelers are the one team that messed this up. The Steelers
And they've
been traditionally very smart, but this year they got duped. And maybe
haven't had a losing season since 2005. So that shows
since Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin. And I mean, Mike Tomlin had to have signed off on this, I guess, but it doesn't feel good to me.
Does not feel good to me at all.
Maybe we get bit by Kenny Pickett and he comes back and he's this great quarterback when leads them to a Super Bowl, but I see none of the talent there for that.
And hey, if he does that, all for him, because I don't hate him. Like if he does good for him. But I don't see it. So that's just really what it is. But another guy on the Steelers that has all the media hype that I am 1,000% buying is George Pickens. I think this dude is going to be him, I guess you could say. He's a fantastic route runner. The first step is probably one of the most explosive I've seen coming out of college. And he knows how to win on the inside, knows how to win on the outside. He's very physical. And his ability to win downfield is just so valuable because a lot of cornerbacks just don't know really how to play him. He's so big, he can win down the field. He could win for the jump ball. I mean, I don't know if you saw his touchdown in the preseason even, but that right there, I mean, it was such a physical play and he bodied the shit out of this dude. So obviously small sample size preseason, but I just really like Pickens. And I really like that wide receiver room. I mean, they just know how to draft. I mean, you have Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Chase Claypool now. I like those. I like that three. I like their tight end, Pat. So I think they got some good weapons. And apparently Najee Harris's load is going to be a lot less this year because if you look at his stats from last year, they were inflated, if we're being honest here. And people said he's I see people saying he's a top 3 running back now. So I think that's a little crazy. But I'm curious to see what the Steelers are going to do. I think they're one of those teams where they're going to be interesting to watch come in this year. Because there's some people saying there's people saying they're going to be a top 10 team. There's people saying they're going to be a bottom 10 team, which I can't see. I think they're going to be middle of the road. I think their ceiling is second in the division. That's just how I look at that.
They're a quarterback away.
Yeah.
And they just drafted a quarterback.
So I mean,
but they're still a quarterback away.
They're a quarterback away, but I have all the faith in Mike Tomlin too. So I feel like Mike Tomlin is just so good. You can never count him out basically. That's just my take on the Steelers.
Mike Tomlin is my in my opinion, the second best coach in the NFL behind Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
And it shows he's the longest tenured coach outside of Bill Belichick in the NFL for good reason. But yeah, that's about it that I got on the Steelers. They're awesome weapons wise, but there's just a few missing pieces on that team that's going to keep them in the middle. There's the big one, and there's also the secondary.
The secondary is bad.
It's awful. It's maybe the worst secondary in the NFL.
You got Minka Fitzpatrick, and that's it.
He was good last year. PFF would like to tell you otherwise, but I like Minka Fitzpatrick last season. But I want to take a look at their secondary depth chart because I know they probably still have Joe Hayden.
He hasn't signed yet.
No, he's
so they don't even have Hayden.
Yeah. Levi Wallace is their quarterback 1. Then you got Akilo Witherspoon. You got Cameron Sutton. These are your top 3 corners.
Yeah, so that's going to help hold them back a lot this year.
I like Levi Wallace, but he's a cornerback 4, not a cornerback 1. And then you got I do like the Miles Jack Devin Bush dynamic though. I like both of those players.
They just have to hope that front 7 makes their secondary look a lot better than they are.
And that's how that works though.
Yeah, so
that's what happens.
My first team that comes to mind is the championship Eagles. I mean, they gave Patrick Robinson got the bag because of that defensive line. So
as did Jalen Mills.
Yeah, so that's just. It's interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting to watch. But again, as we said, I just feel like Mike Tomlin just knows how to deal with all that. He's incredible. So we'll see what happens with them. Staying in that division, we've been pretty busy on that division today, but Lamar Jackson set his deadline. What do you think is going to happen with that? I was
They have to extend it.
they have to extend them. And I was listening to the former Vikings GM yesterday talk about this situation actually. And he said a lot of it always happens in the last few hours, like between the two. So I really wouldn't be thinking of anything of it much until like the last week, if I'm being honest, if I'm a Ravens fan. I'm not worrying about it. I think they're going to give him the extension. I think they know what they got in Lamar Jackson, but it's definitely something to look at. But if they don't extend him, that is going to be huge. You know, I feel like that is going to be a situation where I feel like if they don't get the extension done now, I mean, you could always franchise tag him, but I don't think he's signing it with them because it's disrespectful.
He'll probably, maybe not the best quarterback to ever reach the open market, but probably the best one in their prime.
Who could you?
Peyton Manning touching the open market is the only other quarterback that I'd say.
And how old is he? Like 37?
Yeah, but he also did have. He had
the great.
Best. He had that one season in Denver where he had like 50 touchdowns, MVP, incredible. But I mean, Lamar Jackson, he would probably be the most prolific free agent in NFL history.
He could be their next team's quarterback for 10 years.
Yeah,
and like that's crazy because this guy's already won his MVP. He showed what he can do. So
there's no reason for them to let him go, though.
There's no reason, and if they do, that would be the worst decision they've ever made, frankly. So. That's just something to keep an eye on. I wouldn't be too worried about it if I was Ravens fans, but if it does get to the deadline and there's no signing, I could definitely see Baltimore riding if that doesn't happen. Because as we both have, Lamar Jackson is a top 5 quarterback in the game, and he's proven it. And I think this year he's going to prove it again. I mean, because one thing about Lamar Jackson was before he went out last year, he looked great. Like that, he had a team with no running back. A lot of their wide receivers were hurt. Their whole team was hurt, and he had them. I think it was 6-2. And if I'm wrong, he got hurt during the Miami game when Tua came in.
He got hurt a couple of times.
Yeah, but he was out for a while after one game. I can't remember.
It might have been the Miami one.
Yeah, so that was the game they lost. I remember that, and I think he's out for blood this year, and he's gonna have a contract year if he's not signed. If they don't sign him, watch him throw like 50. Watch him have 50 touchdowns or something like that. Like that would just be cool to watch. But as we both said, I think it's gonna happen, and don't be worried about it, Ravens fans. What do you think it's gonna rank? Like in?
Oh well, he'll get the biggest contract in NFL.
You think so?
When he gets paid, yes. That's how it always goes. The new quarterback, the newest guy on the market always resets it, and that's going to cause a lockout eventually. But for right now, it won't be.
I think it's so funny now because like I remember being like younger, and you would see like biggest contract in history, and you were like, holy shit. Now it's every other guy. As you just said, it's like, all right, next up, you're gonna get the biggest contract. Now you're gonna get. It's just like again, I saw Derwin James, another guy got extended.
Got the biggest contract in history.
Okay, like cool, but I do think going on Derwin James real quick, I do think he deserves it. But if I was a Chargers fan, I'd be a little nervous with that injury history. I mean, I feel like he misses at least 5 games every year, and you're paying this dude $20 million to be your safety right now, and. It's a risk. I mean, but hey, if you're gonna go all in while Herbert's still on the rookie deal, I guess the time is now. But
I'd imagine it's not all guaranteed money. There's got to be some kind of stipulations.
Was it 4 years?
I think it was 4 years, $79 million.
Yeah. So, hey, good for him though. He got the bag. I've always been Derwin James. I've always been a Derwin.
When he's on the field, he's the best safety.
Yeah, 100%. That was I remember watching his highlights coming out of the draft, and I was like, this dude's just cool. Like he just had the swagger. Like
there's one mixtape from Instagram in my head of Derwin James to Kanye Blood on the Leaves, man. I
remember it.
Dude, and that just sticks with me with Derwin James. He's one of after that Florida State mix, he was one of my favorite players. I love him.
Was it him and Ramsey? On the same, because I know Ramsey went to Florida State. I don't remember.
Were they on the same team?
That's what I'm trying
if they were on the same team, that would have been incredible.
I can't remember. But that was, I just remember both of those, watching both of their highlights. I'm just saying Jalen Ramsey now, but those are just those cool dudes coming out of college. But yeah, that's really it on contract extensions. But one thing
They did play. They did play together.
how do they like that just shows what Florida State is. I mean, how could
Dude,
that how do you not do anything? Well, who else is on that team? Like Jesus. Was Winston on that team?
no, no. And
Okay.
Winston.
That was years before. That was a couple years before.
Hold
But
on. Hold on. Ramsey and James played with each other for one season in 2015. What was Jameis Winston's season in Florida State? I'm not sure. Let me find out. It looks like nah. Damn. Oh well. It would have been cool though.
it would have been
But-
cool. But whatever. That's what if team.
It was a 1 year apart.
It's always cool to see like college players or NFL stars when they were on the same college team. Like it's always cool when you see that like on like a throwback Instagram page and you're like, huh, I didn't know that. Or like sometimes I like forget how like dominant Miami was in the 80s and the 90s, and like you'll just see like 6 NFL stars on the one team. So it's just pretty cool to see that. But one thing I want to bring up with the NFL is I think Ezekiel Elliott is walking proof that you just never pay a running back straight up. Especially what this dude's getting paid. He has, let me get it real quick. He has 1, 2, 3, 4 more deals left on his 4 more years left on his contract. The Cowboys do have an opt out after the season, which is pretty interesting. And I think he's gone, to be honest with you. I don't think they're definitely not gonna opt into that, especially when you have a guy like Tony Pollard. But I have a couple stats here, and I want to give Alex Rollins from NFL his flowers on YouTube because I thought this was a great video, but I took a couple points from him. Tony Pollard is much more productive when it comes to yards per attempt, EPA, yards per touch. Tony Pollard averaged 5.5 yards a carry. He is much more explosive than Zeke. He has excellent footwork, great change of direction, and he just knows how to beat like the defender to a spot. And especially when it comes to running backs, you really want that. And yes, Zeke's number on paper, you're probably saying, he had a pretty good year. I mean, if you had him from fantasy, you might be saying, oh, well, he did pretty good for me. Had a 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, played in all 17 games. He had 237 rushes, but he definitely had his flaws. He only broke 9 tackles last season, which was 1 out of every 26 attempts, and that was 47th in the league. His average, this was the most shocking stat to me. Average yard after contact was 1.7 yards, and that was 41st in the league. He's extremely easy to tackle, and I was like, that's crazy. Like I have to go watch some film of him being tackled now. When you or watching a running back and a cornerback's coming up on them, you're just like, oh shit, this running back is going to kill this guy. I did not see one video where he broke a cornerback's tackle. Cornerbacks made this guy look like a little baby. So that is something to be extremely worried about if you're a Cowboys fan. He goes down way too easy, and he's very predictable. He can't run outside. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the explosiveness. And all he can do is rush inside. He's a very smart running back. He knows how to read the defenses. And the thing that's a little different with him, with other running backs, is he doesn't tend to read the defensive line. He reads the secondary to see, who's coming up, who's going to do this. So he's very smart. I will 1,000% give him that. He's very good power back, I guess, if you need, he has that extra 20 pounds on him, so he can take the hit or the beef when he's trying to get that into the end zone. He's a very good pass protector, but you're not paying him $15 million for like 3 good traits compared to 10, especially when you have Tony Pollard, who does a lot of the things better than him. And I think being a smart running back, I guess, especially with a guy like Pollard, who's definitely shown what he can do, can be taught. And I just think Zeke is as good as gone. And it's just an example of, yes, the running backs can have really good seasons, but they're not the guy you want to give $16 million on your roster because they're very just replaceable.
Yeah, and not just the money, it's drafting them that high as well. The Cowboys drafting Ezekiel Elliott over Jalen Ramsey is one of the funniest things to ever happen, in my opinion. Like, if they had Jalen Ramsey, man, they would be the scariest team maybe in the NFL. Not this season, but a few seasons before. Like that defense, with like prime Van Der Esch, when Jalen Smith was good, prime DeMarcus Lawrence, add Jalen Ramsey because he came in and was probably the best corner right
Yeah, he
away.
was nuts.
So like you just can't take a running back that
The
high,
best
especially
one
not
will
top five, man.
the best one will always be Saquon to me though, going number 2. Like
Yeah,
that.
that
Oh, they took him over Quentin Nelson, and then Nick Chubb was drafted in the second round. So that's
Saquon's
just
advanced stats in college too. They like if you looked really into Saquon, he was more of just a guy that got the ball a lot than an extremely productive runner. He was fun. He had these crazy highlights, but at the end of the day, it came down to the fact that he was just getting more opportunities than most of these other guys, and the talent gap wasn't as large as most people thought it was. And you see that in the NFL now. The gap between Wayne Gallman and Saquon Barkley genuinely is not that big. It's not, and they're both similarly productive at this point in their careers.
and a lot of Giants fans this year are saying Saquon comeback year, like best running back in the
I don't
league.
think you see. It's funny because I don't think it's the Giants fans saying that. I think it's fantasy people that are like, yeah, this is Saquon's time to get these touches again, but he's not. Saquon's lost the step. It's you don't get the step back as a running back. Once you lose that speed and you lose the second gear,
You
you
lose
can't
it,
you can't just regain it.
except if your name's
and
Adrian Peterson, because
but he never lost it. He just got hurt. That was it. He never lost that.
his career is something. His career is something else to me. I didn't mean to change subject, but that was just what I thought of. Go ahead though.
Well, those are the two. It's not even really like changing the subject because those two were the guys that Saquon Barkley was compared to AP all the time coming in. Like that was who. That's the model career for a running back. For like that's what Saquon Barkley was supposed to be, and you just see the difference. Adrian Peterson is just an all-time great. He's a Hall of Fame. He's a walking Hall of Famer. Those guys they bounce back. Saquon, he's just a guy that got overloaded with a high workload at Penn State when he was just a little bit better.
He had a good rookie year, and you could say that for a hell of a lot of NFL running backs. I don't think, as you said, I think he lost his step, and he's never really going to regain that. Maybe he'll have a decent year, but for people saying he's going to be Saquon again, I just don't see it.
Yeah, and even in his rookie year, they threw him the ball he had close to 100 receptions as a rookie running back. Like how great was that rookie year and how much of it was just fantasy and just how many points he was putting up because he was on offense that just gave him the ball that much. And that, in my opinion, is what running backs come down to, which is why there is no point to draft one that high because the running back's value is all what you put into them. Like the amount of touches you're giving a running back is the value you're getting back.
I think the phase of a franchise running back is so dead now because
it should have died in the 80s.
It should have died in because the best teams, the 49ers, the Eagles had the best rushing attack last year. They don't have none of them have a superstar. And what you want is you want a pair of fresh legs who can stay healthy. You want to have to the defense to be guessing. That's what you want. And I think the age of the one guy who's gonna like the Jonathan Taylor thing was crazy last year, to be honest with you. I thought they were going to be a running back committee, but then Jonathan Taylor just decided to go beast mode last year. But I just think that is gone. You'll have the occasional season, like as I just said, Jonathan Taylor, but I think that is just far gone. That whole running back is your whole team, like Sean Alexander, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
I like Jonathan Taylor, and I do think that he's probably closer to the Adrian Peterson level of running back than he is to like the Saquon Barkley. But even then, it's not really the way that you want to build your team around just one running back doing all the work and being your main source of explosive offense. Like when I look at the Colts, I don't look at that team as a very high-powered offense this season because the O-line was so great last season. That's what broke those plays for Jonathan Taylor. What happens if that O-line's not that great this season? They have Nelson and Smith still, but they don't have a left tackle. They don't have they don't have a great interior of their offensive line next to Nelson. So what happens if somebody goes down on that O-line? Like, where do these explosive plays come from with the Colts? Because Matt Ryan can't throw the ball.
The only thing that I think is going to help Jonathan Taylor a little bit is I think one of the reasons they gave Jonathan Taylor the ball so much last year is I was actually listening to it was like a Colts insider talking about it. They wanted the ball out of Wentz's hands because like they just
Yep.
did not trust him. And I think like Matt Ryan's obviously not like Matty Ice anymore. And I think that trade was a little overhyped as we talked about, but I just think he's smarter with the ball, and like they're just gonna give him more they're gonna give him it's gonna give Jonathan Taylor a little more time to rest. I don't think it's gonna change extremely, but I think Matt Ryan does help out a little bit with that case.
Okay, so what does a successful season look like for the Indianapolis Colts this season?
Win the division and maybe win a playoff game. I think that's genuinely it. And that's their ceiling, win a playoff game.
I don't think Matt Ryan's good enough to win a playoff game anymore.
I don't think so
I
either,
think
but I
that
think that's their
it takes a very good quarterback to win a playoff game or a very incredibly great team like the 49ers. And I don't hold either of those, the team or the quarterback to that standard. So I think we find a very similar season to last year that the Colts had. And this is a fan base that's extremely excited right now. You watch the Pat McAfee broadcast, they think the Colts are winning the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
And like it's not, I don't see that team being a Super Bowl contender.
As we talked about last episode, even that division is just very weak, and you have two whoever wins that division, to me, is just not a Super Bowl contender. Like I understand the Titans were with the first seed last year, but I swear to God, I remember when I saw them were matched up against the Bengals. I was like, the Bengals are going to beat these guys. Like the Titans are just not a playoff team. The Titans, to me, I'm trying to think of like a comparison to like an NBA team that like just gets in the playoffs and just like
they win the division every year and they can't do anything.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm predicting them to win the division again this year and do nothing, because what changed? Last season, I have never seen a team more injured than the Titans were last season. Every day it was a new injury for that team. And they still, I mean, Ryan Tannehill was throwing to like nobody, literally nobody. It could have been Kenny Stills out there. And he was still performing he was performing about as well as you'd expect Ryan Tannehill to, but they were winning games. And I think that comes down to a testament to Mike Vrabel and how great of a coach Mike Vrabel is. And I like Vrabel over Reich. So end of the day, I think it'll be close in that division race, but give me the Titans. Not enough has changed.
I think it's very close, but I could definitely see that. But I'm going to go with the Colts because I like Jonathan Taylor. And
can't argue that.
I like their front seven. I'm a big DeForest Buckner fan. I think he's underrated just because of like where he is, and like your average NFL fan's not really like so in on the Colts, I guess, because Indianapolis. But like, I don't know. I like that front seven, but again, whoever wins that division, good for them. But that's all you're gonna have. You maybe a playoff win, and that's it. So that's it. That's my take on the Colts. But you have anything else for the NFL? I'm kind of ready to move on to the NBA.
As far as the NFL, no, I'm good.
NBA, they just released their schedule, the full schedule, opening night schedule, which I am, as a Sixers fan, obviously, I'm extremely excited about, but just as an NBA fan, I got two great back-to-back games, the Sixers and Celtics, and then we got Warriors versus the Lakers, and I don't know if that's going to be as great of a game because the Lakers are kind of the same team, but you know, it's always fun to watch LeBron versus Steph Curry play. But we have a few new things, which the newest one, I guess you could say, is rivalry week. And some of it's a little weird because some of them just like seem cheesy and like, so all right, I'll say the ones that I think make sense. Clippers, Lakers, I think makes sense. Nets, 76ers, I wouldn't really call them a rival. I would call them like Ben Simmons versus the Sixers. I mean, I guess whatever, if you're going to fit the narrative. Grizzlies, Warriors, I kind of like that. You got Bulls versus Hornets because it's the Ball brother matchup. So I guess that's decent. Suns, Mavericks, whatever. Timberwolves, Grizzlies, cool, whatever. Raptors, Warriors, I think that is the most underwhelming finals ever, to be honest. Like, it's not a memorable final, so if they're basing it off that, again, whatever. Then we got Warriors versus Sixers, a battle of the big men, which will be a fun watch, but I would not call the Nuggets and the Sixers at all rivals, to be honest. And we got the battle of New York, Knicks versus Nets, which obviously is a rival. And then to finish it off, the best rivalry in the NBA, the Lakers versus the Celtics. So you got a few good games in there, but like the funny one to me is just like Heat versus the Celtics. Like that was just LeBron versus the Celtics back then. I really wouldn't call that a rivalry anymore, to be honest with you. But what are your takes on that? What do
Yeah.
you like? What do you not like?
I like the idea of adding more things to make the NBA regular season interesting, but Rivals Week, and we're gonna have to see how it plays out in like reality, what it actually looks like. But I don't like the way that they set this up. I think that in a lot of people are against an in-season tournament, but the in-season tournament to me makes the most sense. You eliminate regular season games to bring in this in-season tournament and get competitive basketball, because that's what the whole idea of this is, to get more competitive basketball. But I don't think that this accomplishes that. There's no incentive to win the rivalry week. And as you were saying, not all of these are real rivalries. Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid have no bad blood whatsoever, and neither do the Nuggets and Sixers. So that's just going to be a regular season game that's branded as this rivalry game. It's going to, for the players, feel a little bit stupid, to be honest. Like they're being told who their rival is now. It's kind of like a rivalry game is something that happens,
Exactly.
It's something that's not scheduled. It's something that just like you run into these.
They're excited
teams.
for it.
Yeah.
And you look forward to it. And that's just like one thing, I guess, with the NBA that I've just been a little shaky on recently, I guess you could say, is I feel like they just like try a little too hard with certain things, or like they just like try to make a story a little bit too much, which is like, obviously you're always trying to grow the game a little bit, but like some of it just comes off as cheesy and stupid.
That's exactly what the Elim ending is to me.
The
Not
what?
playing the Elim ending where you're
yeah.
playing to a certain score, not playing basketball on a time limit. Like that is completely just changing the game and playing an entirely new game to me. I understand it's still basketball, but you're removing like the clock. You're removing the clock from the game, and it's like anybody that's ever played basketball understands like how like it's the game. There's no changing the game and making it a different game just so it's more fun to watch. No, basketball is basketball. You keep it basketball. I think touching that is a little bit too much for me.
I agree with you. And I was just looking at a few of the other things that they recently added. They have a New Mexico game December 17th, and then they have the Paris game, which is pretty cool, on January 19th. It's Pistons versus the Bulls. And the first thing I just thought of was like, why didn't they make that a rivalry game? I mean, I know it's not been like a rivalry of recent, but like I feel like those are two fun teams coming into this year that people would like to watch. I mean, that'd be a rivalry that I would definitely like to see come back. I think those, especially now, I mean, I love the Pistons. I like the Bulls, but I don't know. I just feel like that's more of a rivalry than a lot of the games that they have on there. But what else do they have? They have that's really it. But they have the All-Star weekend. Utah's hosting, so there's that. Those jerseys are probably gonna be horrendous.
As they always are, to be honest.
Yeah, they haven't been cool since like 2010. But
the year Kyrie won the MVP. Those were
nice
cool jerseys.
Yeah, so I'm excited for the NBA. I definitely, obviously, like I'm always excited for the NBA, but I really like the opening nights. I think those are just like two great games to start off with. I mean, Sixers versus Celtics. I think those could definitely they're going to be two of the top 3 seeds. Those are my opinion. I think it's going to be
those two fan bases hate each other more than any fan base in sports.
That's a rivalry.
That's a huge rivalry.
And they're going to market both of them as a rivalry, but like one thing I've just like come to like notice, the fan bases on the East Coast compared to the West Coast are so different. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to switch sports right now, but like Dodgers, Yankees, like Joey Gallo, like that's just like what I think of right now. Like the hate you get on the East Coast, like the hate you get on the West Coast is nothing compared to it. Like if you suck on the West Coast, it's whatever, man. Like you tried. The East Coast, like they want to kill you. So I mean, like I think
that comes down to the weather.
Yeah,
it's nice in the West Coast if people are actually genuinely happy. People on the East Coast are miserable. Well, imagine living in New York. It's either hot as hell and like you're sweating your ass off, or it's absolutely freezing and the roads are like completely wet and like slushy and it's gross outside. Like it's 100%.
Smells like trash.
Same thing goes with Philly. Same thing goes with Boston, which is a complete shithole that nobody likes to talk about. But all these cities on the East Coast, I think it comes down to the weather. Their fans just hate living, so they hate their teams too.
Yeah, so
coming from an East Coast fan.
oh yeah, I mean, but it's better. Love East Coast teams. But yeah, I mean, like I feel like they're just gonna, as I was saying, like they're gonna market both of them as a rivalry, and like I just you can't. To me, the Lakers and the Warriors aren't a rival just because they have LeBron James and Steph Curry. Like I don't know, that's just not a rivalry to me. I mean, I feel like the rivalry happened. It was the Cavs versus the Warriors. Like that was that. Keep that separate from the Lakers Warriors because frankly, I feel like there's been nothing to make that a rival. And LeBron and Steph Curry like each other, so like there's
They were just at Draymond Green's wedding. He called LeBron my king. Dude, that one almost killed me when I saw he posted on Instagram. Thanks, my king, for coming to my wedding. I literally was like, all right, the dick riding's out of control, Draymond.
they like that's the one thing about the NBA that kind of like sucks now. Like they all like each other. Like there's no like hate anymore. I feel like or
I
like
kind of like that.
I don't know. I feel like it was always fun to watch players like really talk shit. Like I like that. Like I guess you get a little more in the playoffs. John Morant's bringing it back a little bit, but like just one example, like we had like John Morant and Draymond. Wait, I don't mean to change the subject, but did you see a couple of days ago that Draymond Green said the player he would compare himself the most at a young age was John Morant? I thought that was just extremely funny, but I was just like, okay, Draymond, but
What?
exactly. So, but I just think every player liking each other now has just made the game a little softer, and one thing sorry, I don't mean to keep bouncing around, but going back to like hating each other, uh old heads on here, I feel like the defense in the 80s and the 90s has been a little overvalued because I was watching a breakdown about it and it just talks about the Pistons. If you couldn't guard a player, your goal was to beat the shit out of them. Like you wanted to hurt them. And you can't do that anymore. So I feel like the skill, like how they always talk about like the defensive skill or how this player would do this in this league. Like it's just crazy. Like the difference of like why certain things have actually changed compared to like what people say. And I don't know. I know I'm kind of just saying stuff, but
no, I get what you mean.
Like the Pistons are trying to murder Michael Jordan. Like you can't try to murder LeBron James right now. That's basically what I mean.
And the most famous point to that is hand checking. The arguments that I've had with my dad have always come down to hand checking, where he says Michael Jordan is the greatest because he was dropping 35 while getting hand checked. But the reality of the situation is, and you can listen to JJ Redick talk about this, a player who actually experienced and played through the changing of the time when people were allowed to hand check compared to when they were not. There were only certain areas where you were allowed to hand check somebody, and there was only a certain amount of time, and it was policed very like strictly. So hand checking was not really this huge deal stopping people from scoring. As a matter of fact, it slowed the game down because people were drawing more fouls. It's the same thing as the rip through move today, but that part of it gets lost in time, and people that are really just the Jordan supporters of the world love to use the hand checking to say that defense was so much more difficult and so much tougher on players back then. No, there was really just a skill gap offensively. Players have developed now, which is why the game is being played at a higher rate. Yeah. And players are, like you said, better.
So, I mean, I just thought that was a very interesting thing I saw a couple of days ago because every 80s, 90s fans, 70s fans will die saying that it was much more competitive, which they'll just die. And like that's it. They'll die with it. I couldn't think of the word, but they'll die with it. Anything else for NBA? LeBron, yes. How could I think about that 2-year extension? I was a little shocked at first because I thought it was going to be based around more about Bronny, but I didn't know there was an opt out, so it makes more sense now. But again, it's cool, good for LeBron, but the Lakers still are stuck, in my opinion. And now you just got 2 contracts with, I think, how much does Russ make this year?
$40 million. But I think that the LeBron signing that contract greenlights the Kyrie trade, and we'll start seeing that in a few days here. I think they've said that they're willing to add the 2 first-round picks. They've got the salary to match. It really is starting to look like Kyrie is not going to be playing in Brooklyn with the way Brooklyn is building their team, which is they're not. They're trying to gain assets instead of like gain picks and stuff like that instead of gaining players to build a competitive team. So I think that trade probably will start to happen soon, and LeBron would not have signed the extension without that there because of the state of the Lakers at this current moment.
And I do think if you add Kyrie Irving, yes, obviously it's an upgrade over Russell Westbrook. But I mean, if you saw some of the things that Kyrie was trying to put in his contract, even with the Nets, like, do you think a lot of that changes when he goes to the Lakers? Like, I don't think so. I still think he's going to say, I don't want to play back to backs. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And I mean, yes, it's going to be a little different of a situation, but I don't know. I still, yes, do they make the playoffs easier? Yeah, I think so. But I don't know. I still wouldn't put them as a top 3 team in the West, a top 4. Like, it'd be cool. My 8th grade self would be jumping with joy, and inside I would be jumping with joy, but in reality, I still don't think it does that much. It would be cool.
I would be very happy to see that happen. I'd like to see LeBron and Kyrie play together again. Those are 2 of my favorite players in the NBA. But the rest of that roster is so poorly constructed. Jeannie Buss has done just a terrible job, and she gets a lot of credit for what she's done to rebuild the Lakers after the mess they were in, which she's done great. But right now, you have Anthony Davis, you have LeBron James on your roster, and you were surrounding them with the worst possible role players for that. What part of that comes down to LeBron picking out the role players? People were saying last year that he picked them all out. Well, now he doesn't have that same kind of control. It seems like so. And what they added Lonnie Walker.
I was just gonna say, I feel like they lost their best role player in Malik Monk.
Absolutely,
And like
I love Malik Monk.
And I loved him on that team. And I just look at this roster, and yeah, Kyrie Irving, I would take him over Russell Westbrook, obviously, right now. But again, cool. That's all I'm gonna say when that trade happens. I don't think it really raises their odds at all. But I think which will be one thing that will be interesting is, I don't think if that trade does go down, obviously it will include Russell Westbrook. Do you think he gets bought out? Because I think he gets bought out, and I think that would be pretty interesting to see like what goes down. Because I think there's going to be a breaking point for Russell Westbrook, where not a breaking point, but like he has to have a breaking point, I guess.
What happened with Carmelo Anthony?
Yeah, like that needs to happen. And if Russell Westbrook could realize, I could be this energy off the bench, like just accept it. You're going to be off the bench now. For a contending team, I think he's off the bench, but for 20 minutes, 25 minutes a game, where you could be this lightning bolt, and that would be extremely useful for a lot of teams, and it would just revive his career in a different way. And I feel like once he realizes that, he's going to be dangerous again. I'm obviously not MVP Russell Westbrook, but I feel like he could be a contributor.
Once he gets bought out, I see him going to either like, there's only a few teams, and most of them are in the East, in my opinion. I think that Philly could be a contender if he'd be willing to take that role off the bench, but I don't see that happening like too realistically. The team I'd be like, I think could get him would be Washington. I think that's where he felt probably the most at home outside of OKC. Maybe he just doesn't fit OKC's timeline, which is why he wouldn't return now. But I like that. I like the Washington fit. He played very well there. He took them to the playoffs. He played in the playoffs for them and wasn't terrible. They need to make the playoffs with this roster and Bradley Beal's extension. That's a way to add a player to a team completely devoid of talent without having to give up any assets because they don't have any assets.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening again. I think that would just be funny, to be honest.
That would be hilarious.
And the thing is, like, I think him on the Sixers would be really cool, but it's just funny because like that would be a really good. Now I wouldn't say funny, but I feel like it comes like after he would be their second guard off the bench, even because I think DeAnthony Melton adds more to that team than Russ would right now, and I really like Russ, but I don't know. I just feel like they need that shooting. That's what Melton gives them, and if Russ goes to Washington, he'll be putting up a triple double again probably, but they'll be in the play-in. So yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with that whole situation. And if he does play with the Lakers, I'm curious to see what happens. I mean, I think the way that Ham's been talking about it is apparently he was saying he might have him come off the bench, which I think are just rumors. Because who would be your starting point guard?
Kendrick Nunn, baby.
And that would be like wow. Like imagine last year in the beginning, you're like Kendrick Nunn will be starting over Russell Westbrook. So it's going to be interesting to watch play out. But at the end of the day, I still think that trade genuinely does nothing for the championship landscape, and it would just be cool Twitter reactions. That's all that
We
is.
get some pretty fun highlights out of that, I think.
Oh yeah, you would see like imagine like the first Kyrie oop to LeBron off the bat. Like that would be awesome.
Off the back, I have it in my mind already. I see it. I see it
And like
happening.
when that happens, I'll be like they're winning the championship. So like that's just like that'll be funny. But I feel like the Lakers' success is on Anthony Davis, and apparently they're planning to run the offense through him this year, which I feel like I've heard for the past 2 seasons. But
Yeah.
we'll see. It all comes down to him, and that's really it for AD. And I think it just comes down to his injury history and if he can stay on the floor because he has the talent. We all know that. But one thing with Anthony Davis actually that I saw was his 3-point percentage. Like people were always expecting that to take like the leap, and he's really just never taken the leap with that. And that's a little concerning for
It's because
the
of
Lakers.
shot selection. He has horrible shot selection.
He does take turnaround, like he takes turnaround step back 3-pointers.
Yeah.
And you're like, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you doing? That's not your role. Like, I don't know. I feel like he has to take some lessons with Kevin Love on how to be a good stretch big.
They gassed the shit out of AD for a while, telling him he could be the best player in the NBA. And even LeBron was like, oh, you're better than me, man. So he just started playing like he was Kevin Durant instead of Anthony Davis. Like if Anthony Davis could just play the same way he played in New Orleans, where he was getting where he's putting up a triple double with blocks. Like I saw a game where he did that against Rudy Gobert. That's the type of player that Anthony Davis is, and he's still in his prime. I still see it, but I think like it is with a lot of players, there's just a bit of a mental thing right now where he thinks he's a bit different than he is. And yeah, he's back in the gym, but does he know his role?
Exactly.
That's what all teams come down to. Does every single player on their team know the role? And if they do, those teams win the championship. The Celtics, every player on that team knew their role. They got to the championship. The Warriors, every player on the Warriors has known their role for the past 5 seasons. They've won three rings in those 5 seasons. So that's how you build a right team.
Even when you talk about like the 2016 Cavs, I mean, obviously they had LeBron and Kyrie, but like all of those, that was just a team where I think the role play, like it was beautiful. Like the role players, like they all knew what they were there to do.
Kevin Love is probably in that season. He was probably one of the best role players in the NBA. Like he was not a star for that team. They did not have 3 stars. Kevin Love was what, like 16-9 a game, 16-10 a game. That's a role player, but he was so incredible at it that and everybody was. Tristan Thompson too, and J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert and Matthew Delly was on that team, but he didn't play much.
Delly didn't play on that team.
I'm trying to remember who their backup point guard was. They had a couple. I know they had Darren Williams for a year who sucked.
He was the year after, and he was terrible. They had Mo Williams actually, that championship team.
Was that the year that Mo came in?
Yeah, he was pretty good for them actually. I was just remembering that he definitely had some backup minutes in that finals.
Man, that's a memory. Mo
Williams, baby. That was a fun team. That was just like a memory team.
Both the Warriors and the Cavs rivalry is going to be like cemented into my brain as the best rivalry in sports history, like no matter what, because I've never had more fun. Except for after Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant ruined that whole thing. There was 2 seasons when that was shaping up to be the best like ever. Like Steph Curry, the change of a generation, and then LeBron James, like the best player to ever play basketball, just competing in the finals every season. It was fun. And then Kevin Durant.
It just hurts me because I'm obviously a LeBron GOAT person. That 2015 finals just always will hurt my soul because if he wins that one, you have 5 rings, you're on the Kobe level to a lot of people. And, that finals just hurts me as a LeBron supporter because if he had one of Kyrie or Kevin Love, I think they win that series in 6 games, to be honest with you.
Ever since that series, Kelly Olynyk has held like a special place in hell for me. I watched that happen live, him rip his shoulder out, and I just it was horrible when it happened. I was sitting there screaming at my TV at Kelly Olynyk, calling him like every name you could think of, and yeah, I still feel that way about that dude. He's like on my Ennis Cantor level of players that I just
Oh,
go away from me. I don't want to see you on my TV.
and Celtics fans love him. So that shows you're the
How
Celtics
do
fan.
you how do you love Kelly Olynyk?
They
Like,
love
what
him.
does Kelly Olynyk do for you? Like, how does Kelly Olynyk make you feel good about yourself?
And then he got that contract for no reason.
Well, it was like 10 a year, right?
Yeah, it was like good for no like okay. It was like that contract you always trade in 2K.
You know,
That's
it was Kyle Singler is one of those contracts that I'm thinking of right now, where he got a 4-year, $20 million deal from Thunder when that was like a big deal. And like, I don't know if I've ever seen that guy play in an actual NBA game, but
they always had those 2010s, 15s, or like that stretch of Thunder. Like they always had like that one white dude. Like they just always
Nick Collison.
Nick Collison, but like they always had like it's like the CPU guys. I feel like it was just like so funny.
It was a very poorly built team. The fact that Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook didn't get a ring together, I feel like a lot of people put that on them and not staying together long enough. But that OKC team was just built terribly. To have a team with one of the worst spacing point guards in the league in Russell Westbrook, and then to have the shooting guard next to him be Andre Roberson, it's hilariously bad. And I don't know if there's ever been a worse offensive player than Andre Roberson, and he just stayed on that team forever. Even after that terrible leg injury, they were like, yeah, he'll come back good, and he'll be a good scorer now.
And like everyone, his defense, that's why he's on the floor. The man could not do anything on offense. It was literally horrible.
But you know, he's dating Rachel Demita, so dude's a player. You got to give it to him.
Yeah, shout out Andre Robertson. He's doing what he's doing.
I like him, but he didn't fit on that team.
He doesn't fit on any team, but you know, hey, he got his bag. He did more than me, so I'll give him that. Yeah. That's pretty much all I got today. We're all good. All right, guys. Thank you again for tuning into episode 6 of the CCSN podcast, and we will be back. Thanks for joining us. All right, good.